بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله والصحابة أجمعين. اللهم إني نويت التعلم والتعليم والتذكر والتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على تمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم والدعاء بالهدى والدلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم يا الله. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ومولانا محمد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. So we tend to think of our lineage in terms of our progeny, in terms of our children, in terms of our grandchildren, and so on, and rightly so as well. We see that through our children, our grandchildren, our descendants, that we are able to leave behind some kind of an influence, hopefully to do something good. Some people think of a lineage in terms of a legacy of things that they may leave behind, or things that they may build, again, hopefully good. We want to be people who leave behind things that are there to further build as opposed to disrupt. But really, do we think about our words or our speech as part of our lineage? Which is probably a little bit surprising, given that people tend to remember us through the things that we say. Because the things that we say leave effects. In Arabic, one of the words for speaking or for speech is kalam. But kalam is an interesting word because one of its root meanings of kalam, i.e. to speak, is in fact to injure or to cut someone. So embedded within the structure, the semantic structure of the language itself, we see that the word in Arabic for speech conveys the dual meaning of not just to speak, but also to cut, which is essentially telling us that part of the nature of human speech is that it has the potential to injure you. It has the potential to hurt you. And so we should be careful about the things that we say. And so we can see that our words are such things that they can leave effects behind. Our words can be used to build things, hopefully, rather than destroy things. And we can exert an influence on those that come after us. Now, what's interesting is that this is exactly as our deen sees it. Our deen sees our words as part of our progeny, as part of our descendants. Our words are like children that we constantly are giving birth to every time we say something. And what's fascinating is that in the Arabic language, the word lisan, which is, I know it means tongue, but really it's there to mean speech, to say something, shares the same three root letters in Arabic as the word for lineage, nasl. If you arrange those same three root letters, the lam, the sin, and the noon, you will get the noon, the sin, and the lam, which is one's progeny and one's descendants. So what it's telling us essentially is that there's an intrinsic link between the things that one says and the legacy or the lineage of things that one leaves behind. So our lineage is not just confined or restricted to our children. Our lineage consists of many things, and some things that we may not even think about. Our actions are part of our lineage, the things that we say are part of our lineage. The effects of the things that we do are part of our lineage. And our progeny is just one of the things that we leave behind. So just as we have to take care and nurture our children in a proper way, likewise we have to take care and nurture the things that we say, and the things that we do, and the things that we leave behind. And so the third peril, moving on to the third peril, which is al-afa al-thalitha, that the Imam mentions in relation to the perils of the tongue, relates to delving into matters which are in some sense immoral. To put it a different way, matters which are haram to speak about. The first couple of perils spoke about things which are mainly to do with things that we shouldn't really be saying. They're not impermissible, but they don't concern us. So because they don't concern us, don't engage, don't speak about those things. This peril is really about immoral things, because it's by recognizing things which are sinful and immoral to say, we're going to recognize how to save ourselves from delving into that. And we're also going to speak about a further peril today as well, inshallah. Now, when the Imam says that we shouldn't speak about things which are impermissible, herein he means by it anything which is haram to do is haram to speak about. So, for instance, if someone is engaging, God forbid, in something which is impermissible by the boundaries of our sacred law, then it follows by way of reason that it's even more so the case that one shouldn't speak about those things. So if one's, for instance, engaging in a haram act, someone may be, God forbid, let's say, consuming alcohol, or someone has engaged in a type of theft, or whatever it may be, and then you speak about it, and you tell people about the things that you've done. And this is clearly not what our deen encourages, neither in action nor in speech. So anything which is haram to do is also haram to speak about. And what the Imam tells us is that someone who speaks about matters that do not concern them, that such a person is not safe from delving into matters that are in fact impermissible. Why? Because we have hadith that speak about Inna al-halala bayyin wa inna al-harama bayyin, that there are things which are halal and they are clear, and there are things which are haram and they are also clear. Wa baynahuma mushtabihat, but between them is a grey area. La ya'lamuhunna kathirun min an-nas. Most people don't know what this grey area consists in. And so because they don't know, they will these are doubt causing matters. What will happen is that people delve into these things. But the hadith says, "Man waqa'a fi shubuhat waqa'a fil haram," and that's the beautiful message of the Prophet ﷺ, that it's a axiomatic statement. It's a principle statement. The one who falls into doubt will fall into sin. And so, what's the Imam telling us here? How that translates into our speech? He's saying that speech is of a type that if you engage in speaking about things that don't concern you, you will end up speaking about things which are haram. It's just a matter of time. It's a downward slope. So the way to protect ourselves from speaking about things which are haram is by making ourselves accustomed to not speaking about things which have nothing to do with us or on our business. And that's what the Imam has been speaking about in the two perils prior to this one. And he says that, unfortunately, what's observed is that most people tend to gather to amuse themselves through either small talk or chit-chat, but they do not consider that the things that they're saying are either making fun of people, or either talking about people, or either relating things that they shouldn't be speaking about. That amusement of others is no reason to want to sit and socialize with someone. In fact, if our sociability becomes anchored in impermissibility, then that's no sociability at all. And sociability shouldn't be at the detriment of who we are as human beings. And so the Imam says that it's not possible to enumerate the various types of immoral matters. Why? Because there's just too many, and they're of two different kinds. Now, given their vast nature, he says that one cannot safeguard themselves from immoral matters save by understanding the fundamental principles of deen. Part of which involves just spending time with good people. People who have learnt to control their tongue. People who have learnt good conduct. People whose life is centered around Allah. and and his messenger alayhi salam. And the next peril will clarify some things in relation to this when we get to it. Now, there's a hadith in relation to this which has been narrated by Bilal bin al-Harith radiyallahu ta'ala anhu ardahu, who said that Allah's messenger alayhi salam said that truly a man will speak a good word without knowing its worth. In other words, they've given birth to some words. That a man will speak about a good word without knowing its worth, but Allah will record for him his good favor up until the day he will meet him. And a man will speak an evil word without realizing its severity, but Allah will record for him his displeasure up until the day of judgment. And what Bilal bin Harith says that, one of the greats of the early generations of the Salaf, Alqamah, he used to say that, how many a word that I wanted to say, that I was prevented from saying it by just hearing this hadith that was narrated by Bilal al-Harith. Just to keep that in mind. Sayyidina Umar radiyallahu anhu, the great companion. لو كان من بعد نبي لكان عمر, or كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم, that were there to have been a prophet after me, it would have been Umar. That he said that, I wish that my neck were as long as a giraffe, so that I could assess the things that are about to come out of my mouth, and I could determine if I should then let it proceed into the outside world, or whether I should send it back down. That's how concerned they were about the things that they would say. And so the Messenger of Allah alayhi salam has told us that many of the people who would have accrued the most sin on the Day of Judgment will be those who delved into immoral matters, spoke about things which are haram. In fact, we're told that the majority of people who come on the Day of Judgment with the most sin are those who engaged in speaking about matters concerning the disobedience of Allah. It's not even doing anything. It's just speaking about things. Right? And so the above is what amounts to delving into sort of these forbidden, immoral matters, and it underlies the perils that are coming in subsequent discussions that have to do with backbiting, that have to do with slander, that have to do with obscene language and the like. And what the Imam in fact says is that included in this peril is delving into stories that have to do with innovations or illegitimate groups. Gathering together to speak about, say we belong to a particular religious affiliation and we're speaking about a group that we don't agree with. That type of discussion, the Imam says, is impermissible. We shouldn't engage in that type of discussion. Or discussing amongst ourselves the fighting that occurred. Well, there wasn't really fighting, but the incidents that happened and occurred between the companions. Sometimes you want to know about these things. Oh, we hear that this happened between the companions or that happened between the companions. From the angle of we're trying to level criticism at them. The Imam said this is impermissible because it means that we've not understood certain fundamentals of the deen. And certain fundamentals of the deen include veneration and honor for the companions. And the companions are a group of people, let's not forget, that multiple hadith, as well as evidence from the Quran, attest to who they are. Allah Azza wa Jal speaks about them and says, رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنْهُمْ وَرَضُوا عَنْهُ. Allah is well pleased with them and they are pleased with Allah. It's about these people that Allah Azza wa Jal tells us, صَدَقُوا مَا عَاهَدُ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ. They were the ones who were truthful to the covenant that they took with Allah. They never let anyone down. These are people that were chosen by Allah to be the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. Let's not forget that. It's part of our belief system to understand and to accept that the companions are a group of people that Allah chose to be around His beloved Messenger ﷺ, upon whom this deen is built. This deen is built upon their struggle, upon their sacrifice, upon their work, upon the things that they did. Without the companions, this wouldn't be here. That's also a testimony in the words of the Prophet ﷺ at the Battle of Badr, when the 313 warriors were standing facing the powerhouse of the Meccan, of the Arabian Peninsula of that time, 1,000 well-fortified soldiers of the non-believers. And what did the Prophet ﷺ say to Allah on that day? If this band of men perishes today, you will never be worshipped on this earth. Think about that for a minute. That this group of 313 that were there, ragtag, didn't have anything to do. Once they were fighting with sticks. They're about to face a powerhouse of an army. And Allah's Messenger ﷺ says that if this group perishes today, you will not be worshipped on this earth. It serves to remind us who these people are. These people are the very reason why we sit here and enjoy the blessing of Islam. So it doesn't behoove us to speak about the companions in any way apart from with total veneration and respect and love and deference. So this is what the Imam says here about delving into things which are impermissible. And then the fourth peril, which is really all the things that the Imam discussed. As I said, he's a scholar, he's a human being that's essentially changing the way that you're supposed to think. And the more you read Imam's words, the more we come to recognize the truth of that. And so the fourth peril he discusses has to do with what's referred to in Arabic as al-mira wal-jidal, disputation and debate. Now let's clarify what these two terms mean first. Now mira, it's mentioned in the Quran, وَلَا تُمَارِ فِيهِمْ. It means to dispute or to oppose or to contest what has been said. So someone is saying something and you want to dispute with them, you want to oppose them, or you want to contest what they've been said. And what Imam Ghazālī tells us is that to engage in mira is to object to what someone else has said by pointing out the flaws in what they have said. Nitpicking what someone said. The Imam tells us that this occurs in three ways, all of which are impermissible. That mira, this idea of picking out or pointing out the flaws in what has been said, occurs in three ways. He says by finding fault in the words, the words that someone has said. That's one. Number two, by finding fault in the meaning of what has been said. Or number three, by finding fault in the speaker's intention. Three ways. By finding fault in the actual thing that's been said, by finding fault in the meaning of what's been said, or by finding fault in the intention of the one speaking. And he gives us examples, he doesn't leave us there. He says in relation to finding fault in the words of the actual word that someone is using, it's for example by pointing out that someone is making mistakes in grammatical errors. As you know, Arabic is a language that you can very easily tell if someone speaks good Arabic because they tend not to make errors in grammar, because the grammar leads us in our punctuation, in our understanding. It's a very fluid language. It's a language that really relies on our ability to be able to determine what's referred to as the inflection of words to give us meaning. And so if someone makes mistakes, it's easily detectable in the Arabic language. So the Imam saying that if someone's just making mistakes in the way that they speak, grammatical errors, part of mira'a, i.e. disputing, is to pick fault in the way that they speak the language. Or because someone has used an incorrect, has taken an incorrect choice of words. Or that someone is not sufficiently articulate enough. Or by criticizing their language choices. Just talking about, that person can't even speak very well. That person doesn't even know what they're saying. All of that, the Imam says, is a type of disputation about someone in relation to the actual words that they use. Then he says that by finding fault in the meaning of what has been said. Number two. And the example he gives is by picking fault, by saying, for instance, the matter is not as you think it is. The meaning, or in fact, you're mistaken in such and such a thing. Right? So someone has said something, and they've meant something by it, but you're challenging them on what they've said by saying, no, it's not what you're saying. It's actually something else. And we're going to add some more detail in a second on these. And the third way that someone finds fault is by finding fault in the speaker's intention. And this is where the Imam tells us, if or when someone were to say, what you are saying is correct, but you didn't say it with that intention. Rather, you have a different intention for saying such and such. So you're accepting that what they're saying is correct, but you're challenging them that you're not saying it for that reason though. You've got a different intention behind this. Now the beautiful thing about our deen is that intention is an unseen matter. an intention is only known to the intender. And in a true sense, it's only actually ever known by Allah. Because even ourselves, we don't truly always know what our intentions are. We think we do, but we don't. And so the being that truly knows our intentions is Allah. But what Allah has told us and what His Messenger ﷺ have told us is that what we can't do is we can't look into someone's intentions. Oh, you only said that because you meant this by it. It's impermissible to do that because it's hidden from us and we have no way of determining that. Establishing intent is one of the hardest things that you can do in law. Right? You have to almost have evidence that suggests that, but that only occurs in a very limited, narrow context of trying to prove a crime. How about just general sociability or familial relations or anything of that nature where we have no business in wanting to pick someone's intentions apart? It's not what our deen is there to teach us. Now, of course, I know someone's going to say that, well, does that mean that we can't say anything about what anyone says? No, it doesn't mean that. For instance, there may be circumstances where someone is mentioning something that's against the fundamental principles of deen. For example, someone's giving a class, or someone's not a class even, someone's just publicly having you overheard someone or you're part of that discussion and said there's 6 daily prayers. Right? We know there's not 6, everyone knows that there's not, there's 5. But what the Imam is telling us is that even then, there's a way of doing that. Certainly you shouldn't do it in public. Right? Unless there's a benefit in that. For example, that people are going to go away and think that there were 6 prayers, that you may want to just very kindly, softly and say, in a way that you're not pointing out a flaw, but rather correcting a slip. And saying, of course, as the brother knows, it's, he meant 5. Or there's a loving way of doing it, rather than saying, oh no, you're wrong there, there's not 6 prayers. You can affirm someone in their mistake by showing them love. Right? So, that's in relation to what the Imam refers to as mira, which is disputation. And jidal is to debate, where the intent or desire is to silence someone else, number 1. Or, number 2, to attribute to them unsound judgment, i.e. poor reasoning. That you're debating someone, not because you want to show the truth, but you want to show and demonstrate that someone has just poor reasoning skills. They're not that smart really. I can show that they're not that smart. Or number 3, because there's a desire to lessen someone's standing by rebuking them or finding fault in them. That let's say there's someone that you just don't like, don't get on with, or don't agree with. You have no interest in telling the truth or discovering the truth, but what we have is that we have a desire to lessen the standing of the person that we want to debate with, simply because we want to, or there's some underlying motivation to that. So number 1, to silence someone. Number 2, to attribute to them poor reasoning. Or number 3, a desire to lessen someone's standing by rebuking or finding fault in them, thereby suggesting that someone is intellectually deficient or ignorant. Now, the Imam tells us that such a person, what's going on here is that they want to display their own intellectual superiority. That's what's going on. And this, in fact, is one of the motivating factors in why someone may want to engage in dispute or debate. A desire to show people how smart they are, how intelligent they are, or how learned they are. It's a disease. It's a hidden flaw in someone's character. In fact, they say that someone who has bad character, the only thing that they're really disrupting is that they're torturing themselves. Bad character is a torture to that person more than it is to anyone else. I know we may think about someone's bad character as affecting, other people. It does, of course it does. But in reality, bad character actually tortures the person who has bad character. Because why? They're always thinking about things that they shouldn't be thinking about. They're always engaging in things that they shouldn't be doing. You'll see, people with bad character will end up having no friends. No one really wants to be with someone that they can't really stomach being around, because they're just always engaging or talking about things that no one wants to listen to or hear. And the other motivating factor that the Imam mentions is a person's desire to overpower someone, to have superiority over them, or to be seen as being better than someone else. So the first one is because you want to show how intelligent you are. That's a motivating factor. And the other motivating factor is to show that I'm superior to you. When you want to do these types of things, you tend to use fallacious reasoning. either strawman arguments or appeal to authority. No, brother, I went to Oxford, so I know what I'm talking about. It's things that people say, because you're using it as a card to say, well, that indicates that I'm smart. And because of that, you should be quiet. And what you're saying is not really worth listening to. Or because I'm successful in my business and you've been a failure, so you should listen to what I've said. Right? Or anything you can think about in the things that you do, you'll always find a way in which you want to demonstrate your superiority, because it's sometimes difficult to put yourself in that position, because sometimes the examples are about knowledge, but it doesn't have to be. It could be just, you could be a builder and someone could put you down for your building skills. Right? Well, I've worked for ex-house builder, who are, the most prestigious house builders, and you just work locally and do someone's porch. So you don't know what you're talking about. Right? I mean, it's a false way of reasoning, but it's there as a desire to show superiority over another. And this is what the Imam is saying, is that it's a peril of one's tongue to want to do that. So the Imam tells us that these two traits, which is the desire to want to be seen as being smarter than someone and the desire to want to be superior than someone else, he says these two are exceptionally strong yet hidden desires within the person. They are the fount, fount's probably not the good word to use here, but they're the basis from which grows many wretched traits of character and consequences. And wanting to show one's merit over someone else, as the Imam says, stems from this idea of superiority. And that, he says, is to do with our soul. The soul has a desire to want to be disputatious. It wants to be seen as being superior. It wants to be seen as being all of these different things. And so we need to recognize that. That's something I need to work on in my soul. But what's interesting is that the second one, this idea that picking faults in someone, it's almost like you're intellectually ripping them apart. And what the Imam says is that this comes from an animal instinct in the human being. It's interesting he uses this word. He says this is an animal instinct, because what do animals do? Animals rip each other apart. Why? Because they want to own territory, or claim territory, or reclaim it. Right? And how do animals tend to do that? They tend to rip each other apart. Right? But that's forgetting one thing, which the Imam is reminding us about, is that we don't need to do that. And the reason why we don't need to do that is because we've been given the gift of the intellect. And because we have the gift of the intellect, we should come to recognize that there are other ways of behaving during our existence in this world. Not like animals. So what the Imam essentially is trying to tell us is that our speech stems from a place that if we don't claw it back, it will become part of our character. We will become people who will be recognized as being, oh, that's so and so. People will come to recognize us as those people. I mean, who wants to be around someone? Because if you're around people that are picking faults all the time, what they say, what they do, who they are, what they own, what they don't say. No one wants to be, well, hopefully no one wants to be around those people. And if you do, then you have to look into yourself that, oh, is that who I am? Again, coming back to the word that we mentioned at the beginning. Kalam, yes, it means to speak, but it also means to injure in Arabic. It means to cut. But in fact, it also suggests to other things. The same three letters, kalama. It can also mean lakama, lam kafim, which means to punch someone. That's what they call a boxer in Arabic, a mulakim. So you can use speech for a number of different reasons, and one of them is that you can act like a boxer with your speech. You can cut them and injure them. But you can also be a malak. What's the same three letters? Mim, lam, and kaf. Same three letters as the kalam. What's a malak in Arabic? An angel. You can be angelic in the things that you say. And you can also be someone who has milk. It's just the same word, different vowel. Malak and milk. Milk in Arabic means to possess something, to own something. So you can be someone who, through your speech, can almost come to possess other people because you say beautiful things. Someone who's kind and generous in their words, you'll find that they will have this overbearing, this beautiful influence on people, if you like. Not overbearing, but a beautiful influence. That you're almost as if they're in your possession. Think about the people that you've met in your life, and we often speak about the great people that we've met on account of the things that they said and the things that they did. And we still speak about them to this day. So the language is telling us essentially the sorts of things that are part of who we are, that if we're going to engage in base discussion, it's really speaking to an animal part of us. Because as Imam Ghazālī says, we have different parts to our nature. One part is angelic, and one part can stoop lower than animals. And in fact, Allah Azza wa Jalla in the Quran tells us this. Hum kal an'am bal hum adall. That they're like cattle. No, in fact, they're even more astray. Now, how can you be even more astray than a cattle? Think about it. Because a cattle has a sabil. In other words, the cattle have been placed in the world to carry out a function. You'll never see a cattle diverting from its function. It's there to graze, it's there to eat, and it's there to provide milk and to give us food. That's it. You'll never see, a cattle doesn't want to become a camel, right? A cattle doesn't want to run in like a horse. The cattle will do what it does. A human being is the only creature that wants to do things other than the reason why we're placed here. So in other words, we're not fulfilling our sabil. We're not fulfilling our purpose. And that's why Allah Azza wa Jal, Wallahu A'lam, tells us that they are like cattle. No, they're even more astray because you're not doing the things that you're meant to be doing and why you've been put here. And there's a beautiful story about this where, wanting to discipline ourselves and our soul in relation to not wanting to engage in debate and disputation. And just to keep in mind that the slight difference between disputation and debate is that disputation is when you start something. Someone has said something and you're picking fault in them in these 1 or 3 ways that the Imam tells us about. Whereas debate is when you are engaging with another party willfully, both parties are engaging in some discussion. So that's what's truly known as a debate. And so what Imam Ghazālī tells us here is that the great Imam Al-A'zam, Al-Imam Abu Hanifa, the great Imam, rahimahullah ta'ala, he asked one of his companions here, Dawood al-Ta'i, why he prefers seclusion. Why have you taken yourself away from human beings? You're not seeing any of the gatherings anymore. And Dawood al-Ta'i, he responded by saying that he wants to discipline his soul such that it can stay away from debate and disputation. So the best thing to do is I just don't go to these gatherings. And so Imam Abu Hanifa tells him that no, you should attend the gatherings. But what you should do is sit and listen quietly and attentively, without saying anything. And so, he did, and once he had started attending the gatherings again, he said that he found this type of discipline, disciplining his soul in this way, one of the hardest things for his nafs. I.e. to go and listen to people discuss or to speak about things that he may not agree with, but to not say anything at all. Imagine that. You're going somewhere and you know you're going to listen to things that you don't agree with. In fact, you know it's probably wrong, right? Or people are not learned as you'd like them to be, right? And just to sit there quietly and to listen to them, right? Since someone who hears what's a mistake but able to correct it, but stays silent instead, that's one of the hardest things for the soul to bear. Just to sit there quietly. And even more than that, to actually think good of them. So there's one thing to sit quietly, another stage is to think, tabarakallah, maybe there's something they're saying in this which is actually true, or correct. Or maybe I'm mistaken in my understanding. Or maybe they're saying it because of something they didn't quite understand. And so this is why we see in the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ, look at this hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said that whoever forgoes disputation, despite being correct, Whoever forgoes disputation despite being correct, Allah Most High will build for him a house in the highest part of Jannah. It's not saying be quiet when you're wrong. It's saying if you are just someone that keeps their counsel, knowing that you're right, for that Allah will build for you a house in the highest part of Jannah. And so in fact that's why the Imam tells us that were we to genuinely hear a position that's heretical, bid'ah, not correct, a genuine heresy, and you're actually able to correct it, he says the way to do it is not in public. The way to do it is to take someone to a side with love and kindness and to explain with reason why what they're saying is incorrect. Because what the Imam is saying here is this: if you choose to go another path, what you're in fact doing is opening the door to that person potentially becoming more entrenched in their bid'ah. Say you're hearing someone who's speaking about heretical matters or promoting heretical matters, and you say, actually it's not as you say, it's like this. Well, now what's going to happen is that you've basically asked for a fight. Not a physical fight, but a fight of words. And that person's now become more entrenched in what they've said. And what does the Imam say in the first peril? You're the reason for that. So rather than that person being, in the wrong, you've now encouraged them to be in the wrong. Simply because you didn't know that this is not the appropriate time or place to say what you had to say. And so what this person may think is that, it's okay, this person is evidently wrong. If you happen to be the one who's pointing out someone's flaw, the one in whom you're pointing the flaw out may just turn around and say, well, no, it's not incorrect. In fact, I know people from my group that could easily counter the points that you're saying. So you're entrenching them in their bid'ah. So what the Imam says is that the way to correcting people, if you truly believe that you are correct, is very seldom through words. It's mostly through your character. It's mostly through good conduct. And it's certainly not in public. Very few people have the ability to engage in a public debate where truth is at stake and they actually want to establish the truth for the sake of truth whilst admitting that they could have got it wrong. There's very few people who will do that. That this is not a statement, this is experience of the ummah, experience of the human condition. So that's what the Imam is encouraging us to do. In other words, just let it go, stay silent, no need to engage in any disputation, no need to nitpick, no need to find fault, no need to engage in debate, no need to speak about things about which you have knowledge or no knowledge, because we tend to say, don't speak about things about which you have no knowledge. The Imam is in fact saying, don't speak about things about which you have knowledge, i.e. where it's not appropriate to. So being knowledgeable is not a free ticket to say anything that you want to say, whenever you want to say it. The Imam is saying that there's a particular time and a place to say it. And at other times we should be guided by humility. That this knowledge has been given to us by Allah Azza wa Jalla, and He could take it. In fact, in our tradition, when someone would take ijazah, i.e. that their teachers are permitting them to now teach, they would get given this cap which had a tassel in it, which is much like what people have now when they graduate from universities. And the idea is that that tassel was a reminder that this knowledge is from Allah and He can take it from you whenever He wants. Right? And that's the part of our tradition which is so beautiful, that this knowledge is a gift. And it doesn't come on account of us. Knowledge is a gift from Allah, and what teachers tend to, what they want to see, and what Imam Ghazālī tells us, is that anyone who wants to engage in the path of study, the first thing that a teacher should do is not necessarily look into their intelligence, is to look into their character. You could have someone who's super smart, super intelligent, but have poor character. It's not going to make a good scholar. In fact, it's probably detrimental to that person to be taught knowledge, because that person will probably use it for ends which are not good. Knowledge should be taught to upright people who have an understanding of what it means to take knowledge from someone. There should be clarity about how we convey knowledge. Knowledge is a precious thing. It can't be conveyed without due thought or reason. It shouldn't be conveyed freely in open public platforms. I'm talking about knowledge of sacred disciplines. You can't be teaching sort of an open platform to anyone, fiqh or aqidah or hadith or anything. It's not the way that knowledge is transmitted. Because you need to know the people that you're teaching. You need to know what they're going to do with this. Because as any educator knows, to equip someone with the tools of intelligence is to essentially weaponize them intellectually. And if you're going to weaponize someone intellectually, and I'm saying that with a dual meaning here, because you can weaponize someone in a good way for defensive purposes, but weaponize them for bad purposes, that they use it for ends which are not good. And so if you're going to weaponize someone in a good way, hopefully, right, you need to know who it is. For instance, you don't just take onto a military training course anyone who just turns up. Can you imagine that you're going to join the army and you have none of the attributes that makes a soldier? And they're saying, yeah, it's okay, just come on board. Well, people are going to die because of you. And that's why it's so important that soldiers are chosen on merit for the abilities that are particular to defense. An alim is no less of a soldier, because an alim is saving people. That's the function. One of the functions of an alim is to save people. So if we're weaponizing anyone who comes to our party, anyone who comes into our domain, it's the same thing. It's like taking anyone who comes and wants to be a soldier. Anyone who wants to be a talib al-ilm, ahlan wa sahlan, you can come. Doesn't matter what your background is. No regard for that. It's very, very important. So again, as I've said at the start of these sessions, that the Imam really is someone who's delving into the depths of human, of the human composite, of human behavior. And he's essentially teaching us what it means to live as human beings, and more so to live as Muslims that are well-functioning individuals for the betterment of those that we come into contact with and around us. So inshallah we'll stop here for today. If there's any questions, please fire away and we'll pause for that.